What were the events that led up to your altercation with Frank Fraser?
It's very hard to tell, you see. Now, Fraser talks about this row that he had, and he talks. Now, if you look at me and look at the size of him and look at me, and the strength of me, if you knew, and the strength of him, and look at him as, and the fact that as a fighting man, he wouldn't live 2 minutes with me. If we were left here now to fight, it'd take me 2 minutes to iron him out, and that's been all my life and all his life. So he states in his books, he slung me in a car and immediately set about me with a chopper. He was in company with 22 people. There was 11 people sat on either side of the table in the Astor Club. And I walked in there with 2 other friends of mine, who were well-known people. One's from a well-known boxing family. And he was with a lot of his cronies, the Richardsons and a fella called Ginger Dennis, and all kinds of, people that he knocked about with his little crowd. And there was a few jocks. Jimmy Boyle, who is quite well-known, ex-prisoner, sculptor, and that seems quite a nice bloke. He was there. There was a well-known Glasgow gangster there called Arthur Thompson, who's died since. And there was a fella there, Richie Anderson, who I was in Dharma with, another jock who I knew quite well. And they never got involved in the row because they did have a bit of respect for myself and my friends. So I did notice Fraser stabbing one of my friends on the floor and run out, because that was his game. He's a bit sly, stab and run. Before my friend got stabbed, one of the fellas with me was a professional boxer as well. And one of the jocks that was in the company, not the people that I'd already spoken to, but their entourage, one of them was very drunk, and he walked over to my friend and pointed at his flat nose and said, "Did you get that when you fell off a bike as a kid and taken a mickey?" And my friend knocked him out, and that's how it all started. That's no problem. We wouldn't have had any problems except for that incident. So then all hell let loose, and there was bottles broken and one thing and another, and you didn't know who was fighting. There was 22 people sat at that table, but most of them went through the slips. Off they went. So I saw my friend Harold Cashman on the floor with stab wounds, severe stab wounds and severe kickings, and he looked in a bit of a state. So I went upstairs. I'd seen Fraser stick a knife in him, so I decided to cop for Fraser. I got to the top of the stairs and there were some police coming in to the door, but they were uniformed police. They had either been called from the street or the police had been sent to, but there wasn't a mob of police. There was just a couple of police walking hurriedly towards the doors. I walked by them, and there was Fraser, Eddie Richardson, a fella called Larry, I don't know his surname, little toe rag he was, and there was a fellow called Billy Staten. I remember those, and there was others. And there was 2 cars, one had the engine running. And I said, "Any 2 of you get in the car with me, and I'll fight you fair." And I went, "You get in the car to Fraser." And he went, and Eddie Richardson got in and drove the car. And I got in the back, and as I got in the back, 3 or 4 of these others all washed in the back, and somebody stabbed me in the leg. And the car took off at quite speed, and we came to a place in Tottenham Court Road where another car that had followed us pulled up, and the street was full of blokes. And I nearly got away, in actual fact, because there was no fighting men amongst them, But the little guy held onto the cuff of my trousers, and I couldn't pull away, and that way somebody had whacked me with something, and the next thing they all piled on me, and I've ended up downstairs in a cellar. And it was a machine place where they had one-armed bandits, It was obviously their headquarters. It was then 2 or 3 people started whacking me with things, and I didn't feel too much. And then I must have put my hand up to ward off a blow. And the chopper, one of the, as you can see my hand there, went through the hand, and you can see the scar there where it came out. And if you feel my head, you'll feel a hole there. My hand was pinned to my head with a chopper. And somebody was trying to chop my hand off. That, you see that scar there across there. So, trying to chop, and I heard somebody say, "Chop his hands off, he'll never fight again." And that was the word. And then I realised my brain must have been damaged because I couldn't speak. You know, I was trying to mouth something and I couldn't speak. And I felt quite a lot of blows and one thing and another. And the next thing I knew, I woke up on a bit of waste ground. An old boy, either a tramp or somebody, had stumbled over my body, and that saved my life because he must have told somebody, and they took me to hospital. The next thing I knew, it was 2 days later when I come to. I had 370 stitches in me, 3 fractures in my skull, and that. But it gives the story about this, that, and the other. I went off to the north of England. I didn't go off. I was a year getting myself fit again. And all that time, they had gone to Southport. I know exactly where they went. They went first to Manchester for the Terry Downs, the Terry Downs Pastrano fight, where I could have captured them because friends of mine up there said to me, was letting me know where they were. But I wanted Fraser on my own. I wanted to catch him on my own. I nearly caught him in Wharf once in South London. He was very lucky then because I was of the mind to do it. These days, all I'd like to do with him is smack his bum like a little boy, that's all.
Frank said that in his interview that he was just with one other chap and he bundled you into the car on his own.
Well, I think anybody that was in the Astor will tell you the difference. I don't have to tell lies about things like that. Frank Fraser talks a lot of crap about everything. Every time I see him talk, he talks about big stuff. He didn't do anything when Albert Redding knocks him spark out with one punch, and he's had that all. He's only a little runt anyway, He's no, people don't fear him. He talks it, that's his game.
He also said that you received 800 stitches as opposed to, was it 300?
He wouldn't know because he'd run away. He'd run to the north of England. He went to Southport with his friends where they'd attacked a little waiter who we called a Greek midget. And that's what he did. He went up there and they got done and they had to run away back again. They beat up a little waiter. That was their game.
Frank also said in the interview that we did that when you went to see the Crays in Balance Road to discuss Frank, and they didn't want to know and just gave you money to leave.
That was obvious because the first person that came in to visit me was Reggie Cray, and he said, "Do you want anything done?" And I said, "No, I'm going to deal with this myself." And I saw Reggie and Ronnie quite a lot after that. Fraser in his life had never met the Crays until they got life sentence in prison. He'd never met. He goes around the East End with his bus telling people where he'd done this and where he's never ever done anything in the East End. This is all figments of his imagination.
Okay. He also seems to make a joke that he does on his tours about suing the hospital to get his acts back. Is this funny?
Well, that is part of his scenario, and people that know me, they just laugh about it. I mean, if people want to go and listen to a bloke talk after dinner talks, I do them myself, but I talk about the normal things of life and things that have happened to me through life, and I don't have to make up stories that I've done this and I've done that when I haven't. Anything I talk about, I've done. Richardsons.
You spent a lot of time after that attack sort of tracking Frank and the Richardsons to take revenge. Was that a lot of time, or?
I nearly captured them all. That's myself and my two friends that were with me that night. Plus another friend of ours, which I don't like to mention his name because he's never been in trouble in his life. And I think if we'd have found him, I would have been looked for a murder charge. There was no doubt. It was obvious. Everybody in the world knew that I would make a comeback to him, but unfortunately, or fortunately for me now, because I live a straight life now, and I'm happy the way I am. I've got beautiful children. I've got a beautiful wife, and the girl I live with is my, everything. And I live a nice life. I don't have to even think about those kind of people. When I see it, people come and talk to me and they go, "Oh, did you see him?" And they all laugh at him. I mean, it's a joke. I think his latest thing is slagging off Dave Courtney. And he knows nothing whatsoever about Dave Courtney. And he makes up these stories. I think it was somebody else he was slagging off a month or two ago, but he's always this is his scene. And he's making a living out of it, so, all right.
And have you sort of suffered any continual physical problems as a result of that?
I've suffered a hell of a lot of problems. I suffer today. I'm having an operation very shortly on my leg, which was part of that scenario. I had big difficulty getting really fit, but my punch now is as hard as it ever was now, because I've worked on that, and I can still knock people out, you know what I mean? But he wouldn't know anything about fighting fair, He doesn't know anything about those things.
How did you feel when you saw him at running crazy?
Well, I go with nice people that when I've been, and I just think he's a disgusting little man. He just looks like a disgusting little man. And I've seen him at other places, and he just makes me sick, you know what I mean? I don't even feel like getting hold of him, because I think if I was to get hold of him and whack him, people would think I'd taken a liberty. Although there's about 4 years difference in our age, you know what I mean? So when I was 35 and he was 39, it wouldn't have mattered then, you know what I mean? I could have done it, but now I would feel I was taking advantage.
Some people in this documentary have said Frank is a great example for young people to follow. What do you think?
No, I would hate my children to follow a slippery bloke like him, and even to hear him. I wouldn't want my son to hear him talk, you know what I mean? I got a boy 16 that is more of a man, and he's got more gumption in him, and he's got everything that Fraser's never had. He's got respect for the proper ways of life. My son is he's grown up. I'm so proud of him. He's not one of these 16-year-olds that wants to be out doing mischief and doing things like that. He's trained, he goes to the gym, he's fit, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't take drugs, he doesn't do all the things that I've tried to instill into my boy. And my daughter is the same, and I've got two wonderful children. And she's 10 in a few days' time. And I mean, she's like, I wouldn't even want them to hear me talking this type of thing, you know what I mean? And I don't think in actual fact, my daughter is 10. I'll tell you a funny story. I went to see her the other week, and she said to me, "I believe you've got another Eric book out now," because that's my second book that I've published. And she calls them Eric books. She knows nothing about what's in them, but she sees my photograph on them, and she tells her friends at school, "My dad writes Eric books," because she sees my name on the front. So one day it caused a big embarrassment, because this little girl went home and said, "Sarah's dad writes books, Eric books." And she went and got one, and she told her daughter that Sarah's dad is a gangster. And it caused murders in schools. So,
if Frank was watching this documentary, which he probably will, do you have a message for him?
no, I couldn't even bother to think about. I'm not in his game, you know. My game is getting on with life. I'm not interested in it. He knows that. I think he knows it.
And concerning a couple of other people we've had in this documentary, did you have any views on John McVicar?
John McVicar I knew fairly well as a young man. I first met him when I had the Brown Derby Club in Soho, and his sister brought him in. His sister Janice was a very nice girl, and she used to knock about one or two of the girls that went around the clubs. They were all into, you know. They were straight girls. They were nice people, you know what I mean. And they went around with a few of the gang boys and all that, you know. And Janice brought John McVicar in, and he was a very quiet bloke when I met him, and got on well. I didn't even know he was a thief or a robber or anything. I thought he was just a normal bloke. And then I heard of him doing major robberies, and he got a long sentence in prison, and by that time I'd got to know him quite well. And he had met up with an old friend of mine that had been in the Prue school with me, Wally Probin, who was a really good friend of mine and nice guy. And we'd been to prisons, in various prisons together. And when Wally decided who he was, Wally was known as the boy Houdini when he was a kid. He could escape. You put him in a cell, he'd be out of it in no time. So he was a famous escapee. And so he'd thought up this escape from Durham prison. And him and another fellow, Joe Martin, they'd worked hard on this thing. And John McVicar had joined in the actual escape when the time came for them to go. Unfortunately, Wally broke his leg going over the wall, and John got away. And he was public enemy #1. All the papers that wherever you turned on, John was wanted. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine, Tommy, and he had a club in Mayfair. And he said, "Eric, I want you to come to my club urgently. Somebody needs to see you." And I couldn't believe it. I walked in the club and there was John McVicar. The whole country was looking for him. And he was stood at the end of the bar. And I went over to him. I went, "John, I can't believe it." He said, "I need some help." I said, "I should think you do." So eventually I got him a car, got him clothes, took him to a safe house, looked after him, and I'd done everything that a good friend would do for a bloke that was really in trouble. And the next time he was to come into, years later, I was at a boxing match in Manchester. And a friend of mine came over to me and said, "John McVicar's at the bar, you know." And I told him you're here. And he said, "Oh, I'll come and see him." He said, and there was a bloke stood next to him. He said, and the bloke said, "No, come on, let's go, John. You don't want to see him, you know." And I found out the bloke was Eddie Richardson, who was like Fraser's pal. And he took John McVicar away, and I thought, that's good friends, that's what he is. And I've never really wanted to see John McVicar again since that situation.
And you wanted to say something about James Morton?
Well, James Morton writes these books. I don't know where he gets all this, these stories he gets. He has me going into a town, and this is a thing that really gets up my nose. I don't mind. He talks about me going in clubs for a pension. In one of his stories, he goes, I go for a pension. I've never been into the protection racket in my life. I've never done a lot of things I've been accused of, but I admit the things I've done. I've been a bank robber, I've done this, I've done that, but I've never done protection rackets. I've never done drugs and I've never done things like that. But he talks about that. Then he talks about me, I'm going to Birmingham and with friends. I go up north and I go into Birmingham with the Lambrianos and I ran a few girls. That is not me. I don't do those kind of things. My morals are much better than, and I don't know where he gets these stories from. That's the kind of thing Fraser would probably talk about, you know what I mean? So, you know, I like, if Mr. Morton is looking, he would write a letter to me or to my publisher and I will get it, explaining where he got his story from about me running yells, because let me tell you, I've never done anything as low as that in my life.